My heart is heavy, can't catch my breath. My hopes are aching, I need to rest. So much in the day.
We are Black in this game. We are an intentionally intergenerational therapeutic arts practice for Black and Indigenous people who view rest as a revolutionary action. In that, what we do is we think about rest as a holistic thing, not just going to sleep, not just meditating, but a lot of different things. I'm Win, one part of our small but mighty team. I am a herbalist, a spiritualist, and a musician, and we incorporate all of those elements also into what we do.
And I'm Onika. I am another part of Black Dream Escape, and what that means is that we play music, and Win has described very eloquently what we do entail. But so my part is I play music. I like to write meditations and songs, and we use all of that to bring something to the people. So I'd like to elaborate a little bit about like who I am on an intimate level, because one, I'd love to give back to the energy of people who share their stories, and I've learned something from them, or it's helped me reframe a negative belief that I've had about my past. And I think historically it's important for people, if you ever seek therapeutic support, to know who or what is driving that guidance. And so I just want to take a minute to share. I was raised in Ohio by all Black women, my sister, my aunt, my mom, and the way that Ohio goes is that for me, I was there until I was a teen, and then I've been in PA up until then, off and on. And my father, who was not in my life, is a native white man, and so that's the dynamic of me. It's my origin. Raised by Black women, and my father is a native white man, and that comes with a lot of ways that my work again informs Black Dream Escape, and I'll explain later. So I also started playing music in middle school, and I started playing the trumpet because my sister played the trumpet, and she was a great trumpet player, and she used to take me to her marching band practices. I'd watch her. She was first chair, and so I'd watch her lead the line, and I really wanted to do that. I picked up the trumpet, and then that started my fascination with instruments and music. And then when I was out of undergrad, maybe a year or two, I heard my first Carolina Chocolate Drops song. And for anybody who isn't familiar, the Carolina Chocolate Drops are a Black folk group, and they play a lot of folk instruments, and they also share a lot of folk history. And so hearing that song, and also watching them play these traditional African instruments, took me back to seeing my sister in marching band. And so then I just decided that music was going to be a part of my life, and that it had been in a healing way. And so that's another part that drives Black Dream Escape. Also therapist, clinically trained as a licensed clinical social worker, and I practice that in therapy, and I specialize in a thing called EMDR. And the acronym is long, and I'm not familiar with it, but I am familiar with the process. And it's bilateral stimulation, which means I help people go look back and forth, left and right, and that does something. And anyone listening, I encourage you to look at it, because it's a great way to target trauma. And so that is my therapeutic background. Most of my career, I have served Black and brown people, and especially Black and brown people with severe mental illness. And so that also drives Black Dream Escape. I also like to share my mental health background, a personal one, because I feel like it helps understand why our work is actually important. So I've been on the receiving end of therapy, And for anyone who doesn't know, when you go to a therapist, especially if you are paying for it through insurance, you get a diagnosis, and that comes from a book called the DSM. So you have like this diagnosis and all these symptoms under that. If you fit a certain amount of symptoms, your therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist will give you a diagnosis or a mental health disorder that fits your symptoms. Just a way to drive treatment. And so therapists that I have seen, some of the symptoms that have come up in my life have fit disorders like reactive attachment disorder, RAD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And so those are the things that I carry around, so to speak. And they've shown up in my life in particular ways. And I say this because I also think it's important, again, to understand what I am struggling with maybe when I do this work, and it comes even more the reason why it's important. So the way that RAD has come up in my life is that I have a lot of difficulty with sustaining healthy relationships, and that's shown up with people. And so that's shown up in my family and my friends, past client relationships with coworkers, and especially institutions. And PTSD has shown up in my life just as like a very loud past that I've been trying to quiet down. And ADHD, the best way I could describe it is I have a way of functioning that is opposition to the world and how it operates. And so I like to describe those disorders in that way, one, because they're particular to me, but also those are very common disorders that are attached to Black and brown people. And you'll see those differently in Black and brown children. And some of those disorders I've been diagnosed with related to my childhood and the impact it's had on me. So any chance I get to explain what psychologically I have experienced on a personal level, very important, because it's one of the reasons why we exist. Because of the way that I've seen my disorders and my symptoms be treated medically and in the world of psychology, I always thought there would need to be something that was more culturally relevant to us that was also radical. And so here we are. And as we go along, which I'm very grateful for Joy, is that we'll explain how that all comes about and like how we are trying to get to the point where people such as myself who and Win have a place to actually feel like healing can start in this beautiful way at the beginning.
Why I do what I do. My parents gifted me with something very tremendous, which is that they really helped me be myself and be as decolonized as I could be in America. For all of my life until college age, I was home educated. And what my parents did with that was not necessarily just any home education style or bringing school to the home, but it was a more African and indigenous model of learning, of experiential learning, and there's a lesson in everything, and you don't necessarily have to do 1,001 math worksheets. So that's something that I did always when I was younger. I learned a lot from my parents. My mom inspired a deep love of herbs in me. We would always go walking together, and she would always tell me the different properties of things that were around me. And when I was very younger, she would also grow a lot of the food that we ate too. That inspired me to live a more slow and deliberate, I would say, sort of life. There was a lot of moment for pause in my childhood and when I was a teenager too. I've loved music since I was little too, since I was 3, and it was a big part of learning too, and how my mom would teach me too, is through different songs of the different activities that we would do. My parents always inspired me to give back to the community, to be very community-minded, and to set forth and do something to help us as a collective, as the Black community. So when I saw what Onika was doing, I saw in 2018, 17, when we first started, I saw what Onika was doing with what was known as the rest stop at that point before we were Black Dreamscape, and I thought this was amazing, and I want to do this too. And so we did it, and I'm a very spiritual person too, so we of course integrated that into it as well, because I'm a very spiritual person. It guides a lot of what I do. It's also very African indigenous to not necessarily be religious. I mean, yes, religious, but having that inform how you go about things, have a reverence for those that are around you, your fellow people, the fellow animals, and the fellow plants, and even the stones on the ground too. I have been taught by my mom a lot of what I know about spirituality, and I've also been initiated in Lukumi, which is the Afro-Cuban version of the Yoruba religion, as a Olorisha, a person who has Elegba, the Orisha Elegba. So a lot of that and how we work with spirit also incorporates into what we do and why we do it. Songs are very healing. It's a big part of what we do as a business. And in songs, you'll find in both African and indigenous religion and spirituality, songs are a healing modality, something that touches the soul and heals the soul and carries knowledge and different ways to be throughout the world. So we integrate that, and we just want to, why I want to, is that I want us to be more healed as a community. I want solidarity more between Black and indigenous people, and I feel like we're very strong together. I feel like resting is something that is not done, not looked at by a lot of people, but it's something that is so needed and informs everything that we do. You go.
Okay. Okay, let's see. I like to think of hard as like immovable when it comes to things that we've come up against. And I think for myself, one of the like more immovable parts are pockets of white supremacy that still exist within me. And I would say like these are things that are kind of like rocks that I've hit and tried to dissolve and like try to break apart with hammers. And maybe I make a little dent, but they don't quite get there. And the best example I could give of this is what a story that Win has already mentioned, how we met. And so that particular night, I put up an install for what I used to call like a dreamscape. And it was just like I had a dream about being in the forest and I wanted to recreate it. So actually a mutual friend of ours, shout out to Jordan, opened up her house to me to let me put this install in her living room. One of the most busiest days of the month for her street. So we had this thing in Pittsburgh called First Fridays, and she allowed me to, she lived on the street that it happens, so she allowed me to use her house to let complete strangers walk in and experience this for nothing but the fact that I wanted to do it. And two people that I really didn't know had helped me build the install, and not only really helped me create it. I went over their house and we were up all night making these like cardboard trees and they painted them, and I can't even remember, shout out to Chris and Christina, I have no idea how we met, but they helped me set up. Our friend allowed me to use her house, and then that was the catalyst for Win and I meeting. And so with that story, that amazing amount of love and support, even as we grow, these pockets of white supremacy tell me that we won't be supported and that I am not the person to be doing this work for whatever reason. And even though I know those things not to be true, those those thoughts I've learned through white supremacist messages, whether it has come through individuals or institutions in my past. But Black Dream Escape has been protected. I can say confidently that we have been given so much support and love that overrides any issues we've actually come about, because we have been shown that this is actually important. And I would say for anybody who's trying to do work, radical work, when I say radical, I mean work that gets to the root. And that's exactly what we do, and we make sure of it, that we are not a Band-Aid solution. If you come to us and you listen to our meditations, we are getting to the core of the problem. And I know this to be true because I know how to do that. And so this is, again, something that I've noticed in myself, but I rarely let get too far. But that's also another part of the piece, is that there's always work in me as the person that's saying that I'm going to be one of these people that guide Black and Indigenous people to rest. I need to check that and always make sure that I'm living in my values of our business and my individual values as the person I am. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, definitely what Annika was saying. Yeah, that is a big challenge that I face as well. You know, whenever you're a healer in any sort of thing, I feel like you need to make sure that you work on yourself so that you can work on others afterwards. So that's a big challenge, but I'd say also one of the biggest challenges that I feel like I face within this work is that sometimes it is hard to encourage people to do something that is so discouraged by society. You know, as Black people, you know, we are told that we need to work all the time. You know, even in a community, it's been instilled with us a lot of times to be excellent all the time, to not show weakness, to, you know, rest when you're dead. So, you know, getting people to come, it's not been hard for us, but, you know, sometimes people just realizing that being allowed to just be is something that's challenging. It's also challenging, as Annika was saying, to, you know, in a very white supremacist society where everything is go all the time and whatnot, and being such a radical business, you know, sometimes it is hard to get that recognition of what we're doing, and that it's healing modality. We have peers in this in this work, different people doing similar things, but it's still very new, and I feel like sometimes that scares people a little bit. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The best part is seeing people enjoy themselves, you know, holding the space for people. Seeing people enjoy themselves is always, for a while when we were first starting out, we would measure how successful the event was by how many people actually went to sleep during the event. That was always so great to see, people being comfortable and safe enough to let their guard down like that with us. You know, it's such an intimate and such a thing to trust people, trust to be around people, and trust to be safe around people while you are unconscious, while, you know, you are unguarded. So that's one of the best parts for me, is when people feel safe, when we curate that sort of energy, or people who come to our space here often, and, you know, not only rest with us, but also do some active healing with us too. It's always nice seeing the gradual change within people and seeing the change that we make. Holding this sort of space and, you know, helping people become a better version of themselves, have a better outlook on how they view life and society, and, I don't know, kindle the spark of revolution within people.
Mm-hmm. And I have to agree. That is the best part for me too. I especially love when people get downloads or messages from our meditations or doing our sessions, and they tell us about them, and they tell us that they rested in a deep way for the first time in their lives. Or they had a dream and it's going to stick with them. I love moments like that because I think it gets understated within ourselves and the public at large that it takes a lot to get a download from a meditation. To quiet your mind enough, especially again, I'm talking to Black and Indigenous people. When I've meditated before I started this concept of rest for myself in my late 20s, it's very hard for me to settle, and I know that's true for everyone, but one of the reasons why it was hard for settle for me is because the meditations I would listen to weren't really getting to the core of what I needed as, again, a Black and Indigenous person. They weren't speaking to me, and I would have to speak to myself, which is beautiful. But I also were going to those meditations and for outside support, which is fine and another beautiful thing to do. And so when people get to the point where they can quiet their mind and they hear something that they needed to hear despite what else is going on, I think that's a true gift to witness. And also I know how much it took to get to that point. You know, we both know. And so I think that's just like an honor to say, like, wow, in the studio that we have and at their home, but with our voices, again, just a contribution to someone's healing in this specific way is unmatched. Even if tomorrow we couldn't do what we do now, that is satisfying to me to say we had an impact because, again, I just find that essential for our thriving. Mm-hmm. I went first the last time.
Okay, so you can find us on our website at www.blackdreamescape.com. You can book a private rest session on the phone or on Zoom or Google Meet with Onika or I, where we can sing lullabies or other things like that to you. We also have a very cultivated social media on Instagram. There's a lot of nuggets of wisdom that you can get from there too if you're not here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we are located. So you can find us on Instagram, on YouTube at Black Dream Escape, on Facebook as well. We occasionally do live streams, and then we're also located physically in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at 5530 Penn Avenue, where you can find us. And you can always send an email to us if you have any questions at info@blackdreamescape.com.
My heart is heavy, can't catch my breath. My hopes are aching, I need to rest. So much in a day, so much today, so much in a day, so much today. Where are you going?
Where are you going?
To ease your mind.
To ease your mind.
Who are you seeing?
Who are you seeing?
Behind closed eyes. So much in a day, so much today, so much in a day, so much today.
The tree is growing, it sways in the breeze. I set my roots down, I tend my leaves. So much in a day, so much today, so much in a day, so much today.
today, so much today, so much today.